Hello everyone, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the dangerous and very significant winter storm Izzy that is sliding across the mid-south as we speak, or into the southeast, and it's going to start making that turn up the east coast pretty soon. Alright, so let's get started here. So we have our winter storm severity index basically telling us how significant conditions will be, and you can see this is all this is all from Izzy, by the way. This is all from the same system, all right, from Oklahoma and Arkansas all the way over to Mississippi, to Georgia, the Carolinas, and all the way up into Maine. All right, this is going to be here today, the rest of today, through tomorrow, and probably through Monday as well for people in the north, like in northern New England. All right, and the worst, according to this, the overall impact scale, the worst impacts will be from Rochester to Buffalo, as well as around Pittsburgh. All right, that's where we have those major impacts where extensive property damage is likely, life-saving action may be needed, or says needed, will likely result in major disruptions to your daily life. But even outside of that, right, we got the widespread moderate zone, all right? Even down to the Carolinas. Now, that batch down there is probably more related to ice. All right, so let's actually go to snow amount to see, like, for the snow. All right, so you can see that the snow, it's kind of really not in these regions because they're going to get more ice than snow. But for snow, anywhere shaded in that yellow or, of course, orange. And just to make warning now, all right, I-95 corridor, folks, especially from, like, Boston to D.C., prepare to be disappointed. All right, well, hopefully you won't be disappointed because I'm kind of, like, warning now that this really isn't going to be a 95 event. Technically, maybe the spot along the 95, like out of the big cities like Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, DC. Probably DC would get the quote unquote worst conditions, maybe because they're the farthest west, technically, like from a longitudinal standpoint. So maybe DC could get like the quote unquote worst out of the 95 cities, but other than that, really not too much. For the 95 cities, maybe like a little bit of snow and then going over to rain pretty quick. Ice accumulation, of course, we know Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina will be that big zone, that big threat. But there also will be some in Virginia, in Maryland, in Pennsylvania. All right, so these regions up in here, of course, watch out for some ice. Could be, minor to moderate impacts with ice. Flash freeze, probably not going to be too big of a worry, although there are some spots over in Tennessee and Mississippi that could see a little bit of flash freeze. Blowing snow, probably not going to be too much of an issue, except for around the Great Lakes and any like those higher elevations along the Appalachians here. So again, Rochester to Buffalo is probably going to be where your blowing snow could be, right? And ground blizzard, probably that's going to be reserved back towards the Midwest. All right, so again, there's your overall impact scale again. Now, what I did do is I essentially picked like three like National Weather Service designated areas, if you will, just three random areas. All right, and this first area is around Pittsburgh, just to show you what your conditions could be like. And of course, we're going to go through the models and describe everything for all the regions as well. Just want to go in detail, pick three random locations. So this is like the Eastern Ohio, Western PA, extreme Northern West Virginia regions. All right, so here's Pittsburgh, 8 to 12 inches in your forecast. All right, especially points north and east, also 8 to 12 inches. 8 inches for around Punxsutawney. All right, and again, 6 to 8 inches. Points southwest from there, and then once you get towards farther west towards Cambridge and Zanesville, pretty much going west on I-70, you're going to get those lesser snowfall totals. So if you want to escape the snow, probably want to head westbound on I-70, and if you want to go towards the snow, go eastbound on I-70. It's probably your best bet. All right, because again, we do have winter storm warnings in these areas as well. And again, for those areas in the winter storm warning, probably reserved more for Pennsylvania and very, very eastern part of Ohio. Because it does say 6 to 11 inches, but of course that's not everywhere in the warning, because again, areas farther west may see 4 to 6. But in this general area, 6 to 11 inches is expected. Heavy snow will occur across most of this area with lesser amounts, again, farther to the west, and power outages are possible. All right? Travel will be very hazardous or pretty much impossible. All right, our next area is around the Roanoke, Virginia area, kind of like the Appalachians. Eastern West Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, Blacksburg, Virginia. Also, Boone, North Carolina is in this zone as well. Just another area that I picked. And the Weather Forecast Office is out of Blacksburg, Virginia. I think the last one, I'm not quite sure. Okay, the one from Pittsburgh. Okay, so this one is from Blacksburg. So as you can see, the snow and sleet risk will be significant. Again, Lewisburg, Roanoke, Blacksburg, down to Boone and Wilkesboro, North Carolina. For Danville, Virginia, maybe guys more of an elevated threat for the snow and sleet. As for the ice, though, that will be more significant farther to the east because we're in like a little bit more of a warm sector. But I feel like the real bullseye here is going to be Roanoke and Blacksburg because those two areas have the highest snow and sleet risk and still have a decently high ice risk at the same time, right? So Reedsville, you have we'll say like a medium snow and sleet risk or medium threat and then a high threat of ice, right? So again, some areas will see more ice, some areas will see more snow, some may just get a big mixed bag between the two, and that could be even worse. So Interstate 64, 77, and 81 will all be interstates that will be heavily impacted in that area. All right, and the last area, again, so we started off near Pittsburgh, now to Roanoke. Now we're going to go towards now we're going a little bit south from there. So like basically Asheville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, all right, extreme northern Georgia as well, all right, in this zone. Now, this area is in the winter storm warning and ice storm warnings, primarily for ice and some snow. So wintry mix will spread across the area beginning this evening, becoming heavy at times before tapering off through Sunday. In the mountains and North Carolina foothills, 6 to 12 inches of snow with locally higher amounts possible, and ice could get up to a half an inch, or maybe even isolated spots higher than that, right, across the Piedmont. And then, of course, major travel difficulties and probably many road shutdowns. Just definitely stay off the roads if you do not have to be out. All right, hopefully no one has to be out. Again, so mixed precipitation, hazardous travel, power outages. All right, and again, the ice storm warnings for Chester, South Carolina, down through Lawrence, Greenwood, South Carolina, and Elberton, Georgia. All right, so those are just a few areas that I picked out. Now we're going to head over to the models. All right, got a whole bunch of models lined up here. All right, so moving into the Northeast, right, we have the GFS model, and you can see I kind of want to focus on the Northeast here for a bit, so we can, because that's where I feel like the snow will be at its like peak, and then we'll like briefly also head down to the Southeast. All right, so again, I-95 corridor, really, it's really not going to look too good for you. I mean, you may start out as snow briefly and then go over to rain. I mean, it's just an interior low track. I feel like the models have been trending that way now. There was like a bit of hope. I feel like Wednesday, Thursday, they started to trend a little bit off the coast, and they quickly went back, all right, with no time to spare. But again, where that magenta sets up, those very heavy snow bands are going to be where it really comes down, all right, and including like look at Maine, like absolutely coming down like crazy. Right? That's like whiteout conditions, you know, lots of snow for sure. All right, and they really got the cold air locked in up there because even though you know the low is west of them, they still have the snow coming down. Again, all you need is just enough cold air to be locked in. And now if we go to the snowfall map, all right, so again, the target here is probably going to be, according to this model run of the GFS, about 20 inches for Erie. You go just to the east of Erie, it's about 25 inches is what the GFS is thinking here. Also 2 feet near-ish, kind of near Snowshoe, like the eastern slopes here of West Virginia and those in the eastern mountains there of the Appalachians. Pretty much 6+ anywhere in that purple region, which is going to be like, again, the interior Northeast pretty much reserved for you guys. Even like the northwest suburbs of I-95, like Allentown, Reading, Lancaster, Westchester. I mean, even you guys, really not going to be significant. Of course, do stay off the roads because, again, an inch of snow can sometimes be more dangerous than like 6 or 10 inches because people, you know, they take the road conditions for granted. So even an inch or two can still make things worse. And then we're going to have ice, and then it's going to go over to rain for some people closer to the coast. So then the rain's going to turn that snow into slush and ice. And it's just going to be an absolute mess. All right, just because it goes over to rain does not mean it's all going to melt right away. All right. Now, the Euro, all right, actually is a little bit nicer to the I-95 folks, right? So DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and that snow and ice area. And that low is really far west at this point. Like, they have the low center over West Virginia as opposed to, like, over DC or over, like, you know, over Rehoboth Beach, for example, or Atlantic City. So they really have the low west. But then it does go east a little bit, but again, just pretty much staying in the interior Northeast. Again, those heavy bands do set up here southeastern New England, and then eventually into northern New England as we head through later in the day on Monday. All right, so Euro. How much snow for the Euro? Now, again, do keep in mind all the other models that we're going to be showing are the Kuchera ratio, which takes into account a more accurate snow to liquid ratio. The Euro, sadly, we can only get like 10 to 1. All right, so do keep that in mind. But even still, Philly about at 1.5 inches, Baltimore maybe about 2 to 3, DC about 3 inches, Boston still really nothing, in New York maybe barely an inch if you're lucky. But again, if you're counting the accurate snow to liquid ratios, New York may not actually be in anything at all. But they put the bullseye. So GFS had the bullseye, I believe, right about here. Euro has it a bit higher totals and a bit farther west. So about 29, almost 30 inches, pretty much right over Erie, Pennsylvania. So, I mean, those lakes are going to be cranking. The banding the models have really agreed. I mean, so far GFS and Euro agree on the banding setup right here, but also just the, the Great Lakes, right? They're going to have an impact with lake effect snow coming in on the backside, and of course, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, all those higher elevated areas in New England that could get over a foot of snow as well. All right, now let's move on here to the Canadian model. We're on the Canadian model now. Now, they have always pretty much trended in interior track from the beginning. Probably, I haven't really seen them trend east once. They pretty much always kept the low, pretty much always west of DC, so they're really locked in on a track here. Again, eastern Ohio, western PA, you got that heavy snow coming down, and that's going to continue. Now, again, some sleet. No, that could be a model error. It could not be. But heavy, heavy snow and heavy mixed precipitation, all right, areas to the north. And then eventually the snow's going to be there, but it's still going to be winding down. I mean, it could take till Tuesday morning in some spots with the cold air coming down, could push in some more snow off the lakes. Right? Maybe if the wind comes in on this direction, blow some more snow. So there could still be snow lingering into early Tuesday, maybe even if it's not related to the low pressure itself. But even the Canadian, they're pumping out like over 2 feet of snow here, like around Erie and near pretty much south of Buffalo. And of course, like kind of near Watertown, but points to the southwest is where you got those 2 feet plus total. So I think there will be someone in the Northeast that by the time you wake up on Tuesday morning will have 2 feet of snow on the ground. Not exactly sure where yet, though, because GFS, Euro, and Canadian all pointing towards that. And again, but it's going to be an interior Northeast thing, interior New York, Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, as for the highest snowfall totals. Now, with the Canadian, it's very interesting because if you looked at the National Weather Service, for eastern Ohio, now this is pretty much west of Pittsburgh, right? So if we go, let me go back here. So Pittsburgh's about here. West of Pittsburgh, the Canadian in Ohio, the Canadian model has 21 inches of snow. And that's funny because the National Weather Service has about 6 to 8, maybe 8 to 12, but pretty much right around that 7 or 8 inch snowfall total. So the National Weather Service and the Canadian model really two different tales here. We know 7 to 8 inches of snow is a lot different than more than 20. All right, but again, all depending on where that banding sets up and how much cold air we have in place. All right, so there's the NAN model. Again, snow is going to be coming from south to north. That'll come in first. Then the ice is going to follow behind that, and then the sleet and ice, and then it's going to go over to rain for those areas along the 95 corridor. Again, pretty much all models agree on a low placement somewhere in here at some point early Monday. Somewhere in this zone that I've circled, like the low could be here, the low could be here, it could be here. Probably somewhere in that zone where I've circled, and then it's eventually going to start moving its way to the northeast, right? So, again, even some ice, all right? There really won't be many areas that stay all snow unless you're like really highly elevated, because even like northern Ohio and Erie and Buffalo and Rochester could briefly mix with snow and sleet, or I'm sorry, briefly mix with ice and sleet, all right, according to the NAN model. But if it does, it won't last long, and it's really not going to do much to your snowfall totals really at all, because again, you're still talking over, and this is the Kuchera ratio too, so do keep that in mind. But we're still talking like 1 to 2. Not quite to 2, but like 12 to 20 inches of snow is still a lot. Right, and they reserve the 2 to 3 feet up in Canada. But again, snowshoe, West Virginia, maybe about a foot plus. Maybe near the Green and White Mountains up there, could even see over a foot of snow. But again, 95 quarter, this really isn't your storm. It is sad for me to say, but yeah, 95 quarter, this one really isn't for you. Trust me, I was hoping, because like when the models, I think it was either Wednesday or Thursday, they briefly started trending off the coast so slightly, and I started getting excited, and then they went back. So I really kept my expectations low for this, personally, for the 95 quarter, but probably gonna hold out that way. But again, that doesn't mean you guys won't get like a quick inch or two, maybe even over 2 if you get some heavy banding there at first. But either way, the ice is gonna come in and the rain's gonna come in, and it's all probably gonna wash away. But here we have the RDPS model, which is basically like a higher-ish resolution of the Canadian model, the regular Canadian model. And they too, again, because they're Canadian, so the Canadian model pretty much shows a similar thing, the main one. Again, some ice and sleet could, mix in closer to like, Erie and Buffalo and Rochester. All right. And then, the Canadian model does this a lot, so this could just be a part of their model, but we'll assume that sleet mix could take place. But again, it's still heavy snow for northern New England, and it's gonna be a mess out there. Those interstates are going to be snow covered if they're not treated. Even if they are snow covered, when you're talking about 1 to 2 feet of snow, even higher than that, even if they're salted and stuff, and the roads are treated and everything, may not help. I mean, it will help, but I mean, it won't like completely resolve the issue. So again, just southwest of Watertown, all right, just off the lakes here in New York, and of course, just south of Buffalo. Those two areas highlighted once again for the potential for over 2 feet of snow. I forget which model also did the same thing. I believe it was the Euro. No, it might have been okay. So it was the regular Canadian model, which makes sense because the RDPS also does agree. All right, so now let's move on to our last model here, the high resolution model. Now, I did forget to say this at the beginning of the video, but for you guys on I-95, I think the high resolution model is your best hope right now. Only model that's on your side, quote unquote, if you will, right? So here comes the snow. All right, it's coming in. Now the high resolution model, right? It is, I mean, I'm not saying it's just because they're showing snow for the 95, but they are actually a decently good model. And remember, this only goes out 48 hours, so you really can't say if they're good at long range because they only do short range. But high resolution model is a good future radar depiction, right? And again, I think for you guys, especially I feel like New York and Boston will have less chance to see some sort of snow comparative between Philly and DC. But if that cold air can hang on, let's say the snow falls a bit heavier, maybe it can cool down the column of the atmosphere, right? Or even if that cold air in general can hang on, when that rain advances north, it will turn into snow if the cold air is still hanging on. And that's what the high resolution is putting out there. All right, and again, on that, when that changeover is about to happen, you can see some darker blues making their way in there, some heavier snow, and then boom, it will still go over to rain eventually. And again, they do have the lows, same place most of the other models do, right around DC or just west of DC over Northern Virginia. And then the snow kind of like lifts up into New England and pretty much out of the United States. But again, the rain for some areas doesn't really last very long, so maybe the snow won't melt, best case scenario. But again, and this is also Kuchera ratio, this is not assuming 10-1. So Boston's about an inch of snow, New York maybe an inch, Philly 1.5 or so, Baltimore around 3 or 4 maybe even 3-ish for DC. Right? So it does give those 95 points northwest bound areas a chance maybe for some snow. But again, who's to say that could still maybe wash away by the time all said and done. But if you live southeast of I-95, I would almost say there's no hope at this point. But I mean, if you live on it or just northwest of it, maybe you guys do still have a chance. But again, 1 to 2 feet right in this zone here from pretty much Snowshoe, West Virginia, up through Pittsburgh, up through Buffalo, Rochester, Watertown. Could approach a foot, could even exceed a foot of snow around Mount Washington, maybe over 2 feet of snow, according to the high resolution model there. So that is Winter Storm Izzy. All right, pretty dangerous system for sure. All right, now briefly, let's go over the high resolution model again, except for the southeast. I really don't want to use any more models for the southeast other than this one because it's pretty much in the process of happening and for some spots, if not happening very, very soon, like less than 24 hours. So again, the snow is going to break out here. Smoky Mountains, North Carolina, Northwest South Carolina, around Blairsville, Georgia, up in the mountains there. So snow is going to be breaking out. It's going to be falling heavy in some spots, right? You can see starting out of snow, maybe mixing with rain, but then eventually the cold air does come in the night and early morning and turning that into snow. Look at the low placement here, okay? And then look at you can see the blue pockets coming over right behind it. Right in this zone, the cold air is going to come in quick for Louisiana, for Mississippi. And that's why that band of rain behind it does get changed into a band of pretty moderate to heavy snow. Again, because the cold air, it's just wrapped in this system, right? You can see the blue lines flowing in this way and then the red lines flowing that way. Like this low is got some pretty decent temperature gradients with it as well. Again, South Carolina, North Carolina, there's your ice breaking out. And it could last for a long time, all right? We're talking like starting to break out maybe, I would say, so this is about 7 o'clock. So I would say around 6 a.m. for a place like South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe even lasting, 6 hours, even through noon, through 1 o'clock, some spots in South Carolina, before maybe going over to rain or maybe even some sleet. But again, just because it goes over to rain does not mean it will melt right away. So keep that in mind, all right? And then areas in Georgia could go over to some sleet and rain or sleet and freezing rain, then go back over to snow. The southeast, it's going to be a mix of wintry precipitation for you guys, to say the least. Northern Alabama, some spots in those higher elevations could get over 6 inches. Same thing with 6 inches of snow there for northern Georgia. Even putting on 18 inches there on the higher elevation spots in North Carolina could get over a foot, though. More widespread in the mountains there, even central Tennessee as well could get a lot of snow. And then, of course, we cannot forget the ice totals. The high resolution model is putting out some crippling ice. Absolutely just damaging, right? We're not talking up to a half an inch. We're talking about 3/4 of an inch, all right? In those very dark colors. So basically in northwestern South Carolina and up into North Carolina, right in there, half inch to 3/4 of an inch of ice, all right? But anywhere shaded in here will have a pretty dangerous ice threat. So please do stay inside if you can. Please do stay inside because very dangerous storm, and it's going to be working through the southeast into tonight, and early tomorrow, and then later tomorrow into Monday. It's going to be in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. So be prepared for sure, especially in the interior Northeast. You guys are going to get the big snows. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I'll catch you guys in the next video.